Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, the world is holding its breath as a new and unexpected message comes from Gaza. Hamas says it agrees to release Israeli hostages, but it also demands new talks over the United States-backed ceasefire plan. This statement has sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles because after months of silence, bloodshed, and broken trust, the possibility of an agreement suddenly looks both real and fragile at the same time. The news came late in the evening, carried by regional media quoting senior Hamas officials, saying the group is ready to release all Israeli hostages, including both the living and those who have died during captivity, according to what they called the Trump Gaza peace plan. But the message came with conditions. Hamas wants further discussion on what happens next. They are demanding clarity on how Gaza will be governed, who will control the borders, and what guarantees will protect Palestinians from future attacks. International mediators reacted within minutes. Messages poured in from Washington, Cairo, Doha, and Tel Aviv, each interpreting the move differently. Some called it progress, others called it strategy, and a few said it might just be another round of political theater. But inside Gaza, sources describe a rare moment of tension mixed with hope, because if this deal moves forward, it could stop months of relentless airstrikes and suffering. Trump responded quickly, saying Israel must immediately stop bombing Gaza to create safe conditions for the hostage release. His statement was blunt and direct. He said, "Peace cannot come from destruction, it must come from choice." The White House confirmed that discussions are ongoing with both sides, but that any step forward depends on written guarantees and verified timelines. Israeli officials welcomed the possibility of getting hostages back, but warned that Hamas cannot be trusted without strict international supervision. On the streets of Tel Aviv, the families of hostages gathered outside the defense ministry holding pictures, candles, and signs demanding that the government act fast. Many of them have waited for months with little news. Now, they see a sliver of hope, but fear it could vanish overnight. One mother said, "Every time they say soon, it feels like another promise built on smoke." Her words echo across the country, where emotions are raw and patience is running thin. In Gaza, the atmosphere is equally heavy. People walk among ruins, listening to radios and scanning their phones for news. Some whisper that a ceasefire might finally be coming. Others fear it will end like the last one, with promises unkept and violence returning even stronger. Many families have lost everything, and the idea of another pause feels like a lifeline. Analysts say the deal being discussed is a three-phase plan. Phase 1 would involve the release of hostages and a temporary halt in military operations. Phase 2 would bring negotiations on Gaza's long-term governance and the role of Hamas. Phase 3 would focus on reconstruction and political normalization under regional supervision. But each phase carries enormous challenges and risks. The most difficult question remains, who will govern Gaza after the ceasefire? Israel does not want Hamas in control, but Hamas insists that it cannot surrender power without political guarantees that protect its fighters and supporters. Washington and its allies are trying to shape a plan where an international coalition could oversee administration and security, but that idea faces resistance on both sides. Trump's team says they want to see immediate humanitarian relief and secure access for aid convoys. The United Nations reports that nearly half of Gaza's population is displaced, lacking food, medicine, and clean water. Hospitals are overwhelmed, and the health system is near collapse. The ceasefire would allow temporary stability for aid agencies to operate, but no one can promise that the peace will hold. Meanwhile, inside Israel, political tensions are rising. The government faces public anger over its handling of the war and the hostages. The opposition accuses leaders of moving too slowly and failing to protect citizens. The Prime Minister has promised a careful but firm approach, saying Israel will not trade security for illusions. His words resonate with part of the population, but anger others who demand quicker action to bring their loved ones home. Internationally, the reaction is mixed. European leaders are calling for an urgent ceasefire and praising any move that saves lives, while some Middle Eastern countries remain skeptical about the sincerity of Hamas and Israel alike. Regional analysts warn that both sides have broken promises before and that trust is still almost non-existent. Yet diplomats continue to work behind closed doors, hoping to stitch together fragile understandings before the window of opportunity closes. Across Washington, experts describe this as a defining test of Trump's foreign policy approach, a deal that could either end one of the most devastating conflicts in recent history or crumble into chaos. Critics argue that any plan without accountability will fail. Supporters say it is the best chance for peace in years. What happens in the next few days could determine not just the future of Gaza, but the balance of power across the Middle East. Social media is buzzing with debates. Some users share optimism, quoting the word peace. Others accuse both sides of manipulation. Hashtags like Gaza Ceasefire and Bring Them Home trend globally with millions of posts. Videos of families waiting for news and footage of destroyed neighborhoods fill feeds across platforms, showing the human cost of delay. Inside Gaza, the signals from Hamas appear divided. Some members publicly support negotiations, while others insist on stronger guarantees about prisoner exchanges and border control. Israeli analysts say this internal split could slow implementation or even derail the agreement altogether. They also point to the possibility of other militant factions trying to disrupt the process with new attacks. The coming hours are crucial. Intelligence sources say envoys from Egypt, Qatar, and the U.S. are in direct communication with both sides through encrypted channels, coordinating the framework for hostage release, verification, and movement corridors. International peacekeepers are being discussed to monitor compliance and protect civilians during transitions, yet history shows how fragile such mechanisms can be. For residents of Gaza City, the night sky remains uncertain. Drones still hum overhead even as talk of peace grows louder on television. The paradox is hard to ignore. Life between hope and fear continues. Checkpoints are tense and markets half empty, but for the first time in months, conversations about normal life begin to return. Small business owners talk about reopening. Schools, teachers discuss returning to classrooms. Parents dare to imagine a morning without sirens. In Israel, the emotional toll is enormous. The hostage crisis has shaken the nation psychologically. Every news update feels like a personal story. People share their frustration with leadership, but also their determination to see this through. Soldiers speak of exhaustion but readiness. Families talk about rebuilding trust if hostages return. One man said, "If we see them walk free, the country will breathe again." The White House says coordination with allies remains intense. Officials are drafting frameworks for post-ceasefire reconstruction and financial assistance. Discussions involve major donors from the European Union, Gulf states, and the World Bank. Their challenge will be ensuring that funds are not misused while still reaching those in need. Washington says transparency will be key, but experience shows that managing aid in conflict zones is never simple. Regional players are watching closely. Iran, Hezbollah, and Turkey, each weighing their response to any change in Gaza's status. The region's geopolitics could shift dramatically if the ceasefire holds or collapse back into confrontation if it fails. Saudi Arabia has reiterated its support for peace, but maintains that true stability requires justice for Palestinians. This sentiment resonates widely across Arab media, shaping public opinion and political pressure. As hours pass, new statements emerge. Hamas officials claim they have shared detailed lists of hostages and conditions for release. Israeli media reports verify some exchanges are already under preliminary review. The first transfers could occur within days if both sides agree to verified monitoring mechanisms. Diplomatic sources hint that a joint operations room will be established under U.S. supervision with regional observers to manage the logistics. Humanitarian corridors will remain a top priority. The United Nations is preparing emergency missions to deliver medical supplies and food aid once security conditions allow. The Red Cross has confirmed readiness to assist in identifying and transporting released captives. People around the world are watching their screens, waiting for signs of movement. Each update carries weight because this conflict has left no one untouched. Millions have seen the images of destruction and grief. Now they want to see the images of release and relief. If this agreement moves forward, It could redefine what peace means in a region exhausted by endless wars. Still, skepticism remains high. Many fear that even if hostages are released, new disputes will emerge over who controls Gaza's future. Others warn that political exploitation could sabotage the process before it even begins. Inside Washington, analysts debate whether the U.S. should guarantee security commitments to both sides or maintain strategic ambiguity to preserve leverage. This unfolding situation reveals a deeper reality, that beyond politics, it is human stories driving the urgency. Mothers, fathers, children waiting for closure. Nations calculating risks, but families counting seconds. Leaders making statements, but ordinary people living consequences. And through it all, one question lingers: will the promise of peace finally outlast the cycle of violence? The coming days could be historic or heartbreaking. Diplomats call this a fragile window of opportunity. Intelligence officers call it a race against time. Every hour matters because one misunderstanding could unravel everything, or one act of trust could build something new. History in this region is built on such moments where decisions taken behind closed doors ripple through generations. On the ground, reporters describe cautious optimism in refugee camps. Aid workers say preparations are underway for emergency relief convoys. Trucks are being loaded with water and food, but access will depend entirely on the ceasefire holding for at least 72 hours. Humanitarian groups are pleading for immediate de-escalation, regardless of political progress, saying that every delay costs lives. Israeli sources confirm that discussions are ongoing about partial withdrawal from certain zones, conditional upon verified hostage release and international monitoring. This is seen as a potential confidence-building measure, but also as a political gamble for the government facing internal division. The cabinet remains split between hawks demanding total victory and pragmatists arguing that saving hostages must take priority. In the U.S., public opinion appears divided. Polls show that Americans support humanitarian aid, but remain cautious about deep involvement. Foreign policy experts warn that prolonged engagement could become politically costly, especially with elections approaching. Yet they also agree that a stable Gaza would benefit regional trade, security, and energy corridors across the Mediterranean. As darkness falls over Gaza, reporters describe unusual quietness, the night air filled with anticipation. People stay near radios, waiting for confirmation that the first hostages have been identified for transfer. Rumors spread quickly. Some say lists have been exchanged, others deny it. Still, the sense of change is undeniable. Whether it leads to peace or deception remains to be seen. The emotional power of this story is immense. It unites themes of loss, redemption, and fragile hope in a region defined by pain and persistence. The world has seen countless ceasefires announced and broken, yet each time hope returns. Because peace, even when uncertain, is stronger than despair. For the families on both sides, this is not about politics, it is about life. And so the narrative continues, one statement, one negotiation, one verification at a time. The world watches, leaders speak, promises are made, and the people who have lost the most remain silent, waiting. Because in wars like these, silence often speaks louder than declarations. It holds the memory of everything that has happened and the fear of everything that could happen again. As dawn approaches over Gaza and Tel Aviv, the first signs of movement may emerge. Convoys positioning, border posts opening, communication lines lighting up the horizon, not with explosions, but with anticipation. Perhaps, for the first time in months, the sound of engines might mean life, not loss. And as the world watches these next steps, every action will matter. Every decision will echo. And so we end this long day where it began, with uncertainty, yet also with possibility. Hamas says it agrees to release Israeli hostages, but seeks talks on the U.S. ceasefire plan. The world now waits to see if words become actions and if this fragile promise can hold against the weight of history. As the sun rises once more over the shattered skyline of Gaza and the restless streets of Tel Aviv, the world stands still, holding its breath. This moment could mark the first step toward an end or the beginning of another cycle of pain. But somewhere between fear and faith, people are daring to hope that this time it might be different, that this time the words will turn into action, that lives will be spared, and that peace, no matter how fragile, will finally have a chance to breathe again. Thank you for watching. Stay with us as we continue to follow every moment of this developing story. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring you the truth behind every headline. Stay informed, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next report.